anyone that is Chinese, Japanese, any type of yellow skinned bastard, if you ask stupid questions in class, teacher would be like, stop asking stupid questions. I was that kid. Write down what your ideal customer persona looks like, your ICP. What I wrote down was anyone that can rub two coins together is our ICP, because right now it's all about money. Just to be able to justify and say, we actually have a business here, not some kind of hobby.
Does it feel like you're sort of that leader that is carrying all the weight?
The weight is just like one baton. Watch my baton. Let's play the song. And then I just have to tap and go, ready? Bah, and then everything just goes as it needs to go.
Difference from pure curiosity with no intention versus extracting information.
One party is inquisitive, the other party is interrogative.
Hmm.
Like all of a sudden you feel like under your arms are getting a bit sweaty, like, holy shit, this person is curious, but why am I like, are you about to ask me for my like my PIN code for my credit card also? Like there's something going on here. They're not seeking to connect, they're seeking to extract.
Thank you so much for your time today, Dia. I think how I first came about you, I've been in the sort of online marketing space, e-commerce space over the last sort of 7 years, and I think I started seeing you pop up maybe during COVID, during the Clubhouse days, and then I think we had like a lot of like you would I'd see you with people like Jordan Bernard or Nick Shackelford, those sort of Facebook sort of ads type people, and then I guess ever since then you've just been consistently showing up in my reels organically, here and there, maybe once a month, and you've been on the list, and that's how I first came across you.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Feels like I've been doing it forever, but also for a very short time at the same time. I don't know how my brain wraps around that, but that seems to be the way it goes.
That's awesome. I guess for a bit of context for the audience, what have you been focused on over the last 6 months?
A lot of figuring out where our agency is going. And quite honestly, also a lot of where my life and my career and my trajectory is going to. I turned 40 this year, which I think gives most people pause when they hit a number like that to go, well, where's this whole thing going? Um, where is my contentment, my fulfillment, and what what are the exciting challenges or the challenges that still excite me and will excite me for the next 40 years to come. That's more on the personal side. On the business side, we can cover that first, I guess. November 2022, ChatGPT just went on the internet and said, hey guys, I'm here. And I think changed the trajectory of the world. AI was around before, like Jasper AI was around for like copywriting and stuff like that. And then, but ChatGPT, I think, really inserted it into mainstream media and into the mainstream frame of mind. And November 2022 was also when I started to see writing on the wall with regards to the offering that done for you agencies provide, or at least a perceived value of it, right? Like if machines are going to be able to start doing better stuff with machine learning can do better stuff with, say, for example, the media buying ad auction. If AI can start generating first images and then video, and they're making leaps and bounds there. If AI can also start generating music, and then AI can also start generating copy, then a lot of the output work, which done for you agencies are hang their value proposition on, a lot of that output work starts to decrease in perceived value, because it's a bit like, well, you can get a chauffeur with a nice limousine company, or you can just get an Uber. The perceived value starts to dwindle a little bit when Uber starts to show up and make it super convenient and also like price accessible. So really, for the past maybe 18 months almost, what we've been focusing on, and more and more so, with intensity closer to recently, is really just answering the question, where does the value lie, right? Is it in hands work or is it in brains work? And what does that actually mean? So a lot of leaning more into the consultancy part of our value proposition has been the shift that we've been massaging. Um, we've been massaging the company and the agency towards in terms of headcount, resourcing, how we train people, et cetera. And then secondarily to that, which is like super funny timing that we're doing this interview now, we are next month launching, and we started promotions last week, but next month we're launching our own D2C community So paid community, mentorship, you get access to playbooks and courses, but also just a chat group and a support group where DTC founders can actually interact, marketers too, interact with one another, learn from one another, and then be able to get expertise, help without the need to actually just hire our agency. So I guess for anyone that can't afford an agency or doesn't have the resources, it's not the right time to be able to do so. At least we're able to still give them the goods in a meaningful way.
That's amazing, Dee. Do you plan on launching the community on like school Discord or your own LMS?
So my business partner Ray, he was our head of performance, looking across all channels, and moving into the future, he's going to be the dedicated head of DTC Dojo, which is the name of the community. Um, and so right now we didn't want to over architect it really. So it was just super low frills Telegram group, some type of we use HighLevel for our CRM, which also happens to have a community and a course component. So we're just putting people in there, have the Telegram group, and really not obsess too much about the over engineering the tech portion and really infusing more of it into the community portion, which I think is really where the value lies. Having a good community host, keeping people together, being a supportive voice, like being there when they actually need them. I've been parts of paid communities where it's all sold as very nice and pretty and rosy on during the pre-sale, all the sales pages, and then you get in there and then it's like community moderators and they just throw you a course and then you ask a question, but then they don't have the type of resourcing or infrastructure or time or bandwidth to be able to actually answer some of these questions. So a lot of the we're really treating this like MVP, full experiment. What can we learn? How do we iterate? Rather than put a lot of pressure on this really big launch. So yeah, the long way of answering to say not on school.com just yet, or Circle, or any of those types of platforms for now.
That's awesome. Do you guys plan to run a bunch of ads and hit cold traffic, or are you just going to be retargeting your existing audience that follows you, Dee? Is it going to be like a webinar? Any ideas on the best way to sell a community?
So working in concentric circles. Fortunately for us, we're not exactly the new kid on the block. We've been doing this for like 7, 8 years now. So there is a bit of a following that we can tap on first to go, hey, listen, we know that you've been knocking on our door and wanting to work with the agency. Whether the conversation at the time was that it's not a right timing from an affordability standpoint, or we didn't have capacity, anything of that nature, or you want to just like be able to skill up your team because you already have the internal resources and you happen to be on our mailing list or happen to be following us, let's start there. And then going, I guess it's just like raising capital. You start with the three F's, right? The friends, the family, and the fools. And then after that point, you then go out and start going cold. So concentric circle, starting with the inner circle first. Our next then approach is to go, well, we have industry friends also. So let's see whether we can have them as ambassadors, people that come in, not only add value to our audience, but then also perhaps become ambassadors and advocates for the community that we're building. And then the cold portion. And then it starts to, once all those three things are in flight, it starts to really weave and bob and start to integrate one into the other two, right? So it might go out, we might have some cold traffic type campaigns. Then instead of for the people that don't purchase on that first touch, they might then do their own homework and be like, who the hell is this right hook bunch anyway? And are they legit or not? And they might go onto the organic page, start looking around, and then go back and make that decision. So that buyer journey is always very non-linear in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like with the community, would you, if you were, when you do run ads for the cold traffic, would it just be like a creative, send them to a landing page, or do you?
VSL on the lander, yeah, exactly. Okay. Exactly. So the live version of that right now is get.righthookdigital.com/DTC Dojo, DOJO. So you can see if you want to funnel hack us, you can already see like what that looks like. And right now it's just a combination of mainly newsletter sends, but also at the same time, organic posts on our Instagram to go like, if you leave a comment here, if you want to find out more, leave a comment, and then we let ManyChat kind of do the rest of the heavy lifting.
That's epic. Do you have a separate list for your agency Right Hook versus your own personal brand, or is everything sort of the same list and you somehow organize it in the CRM?
I've really neglected the personal brand thing, and have copped a lot of shit from my friends who have like developed their personal brands across the years. I had to really wrestle with, uh, what does my personal brand actually mean, and how much of it is a me as the face of Right Hook, and that is the totality of the persona that the world sees, or and this is the part about like you asking me earlier, what have I been focusing on for the past 6 months, or am I more than just a mouthpiece for the agency, right? So this isn't very well advertised because I don't talk about it almost at all in my public facing material, but one of my passions is actually coaching executives, whether that is agency owners or brand owners who are on that trajectory of going like, holy shit, my brand is starting to grow. Where do my leadership capabilities, my team building capabilities, my problem solving capabilities, not only of myself as apex leader, but then also the people that I'm electing to bring on this journey with me? How do I navigate those waters? So I've got like a little portfolio of 4 to 5 uh, different teams. Some of them are pairs, COO and CEO. Some of them are the solo founders that I coach on the regular. The main reason why I didn't advertise it was because the last thing I wanted was like 12 people to come in, and then I start to lose time and bandwidth being founder and CEO for co-founder and CEO for Right Hook. But that's where I had to kind of ask the question, right? Like, what is my personal brand? What is this persona? If I spread it too thin, it just confuses people. Like, you look at Andy Mai, studying.com, it's like studying.com, understood. But if it's studying.com and also he teaches you how to do some graphic design, and maybe he's like illustrator on the side, and like he also like does MMA, and all that stuff is put into one thing, I personally have been on the receiving end of like, I don't know what this person does when I go to their profile or when I listen to their content. So I was very cautious of that, probably in the realm of like even overthinking it, right? So the decision is now to then, and that's very recently, I've made the decision to also launch my own pod, which has nothing to do with Right Hook, uh, everything to do with talking to fascinating people across neuroscience, psychology, business building, sales, stuff that interests me, and even in tech, being a founder, stuff like that. And it's called Distilled with D. It's all about distilling people's brains and distilling down concepts and stuff like that. So I think it's right now, it's just like a finding my feet as I go. But to say that it is going to be sucked into one CRM for my personal brand and Right Hook, I think I'd probably start to pollute the Right Hook list if, people came in for a whole bunch of different reasons into one list.
Yeah, as you talked about the focus thing, I'm definitely not focused, and my brand is all over the place, and I'm trying to start niche down and start focusing. So people have definitely have no idea what I do, and that's my fault, and that's my problem. And I'm definitely going to start fixing it and sort of start niching down, start putting in like a founder's letter on the landing page of studying.com, so where people can get a gist of what it is, what we do. So I'm
So where is it now? Like what was your struggle and your wrestle looks like in terms of the all over the place?
I'd love to get your thoughts on this because it's something you mentioned earlier,
Let's
but
go.
maybe around 4 years ago, before I started the podcast during COVID, our education company did very well. We sort of help people build e-commerce businesses, drop shipping, Facebook ads. We have a whole program on that. And during COVID, we did very well, and I was finally at a good place where cash flow positive, all my hard work paid off, but I was losing that purpose or passion. Every day felt like I was, eating glass each morning for what? And I started sort of doing things I enjoyed. I was like, I'm sick of creating e-commerce YouTube videos. I'm like 800 videos in, 800 days in. Let's start creating content on personal development, my growth, mindset, vlogs, document my day to day life. Let's start a podcast. Let's start networking. Let's start putting together sort of mastermind dinners. And as I started, yes, it was really fun. I was more, fulfilled in the day to day. And then my company just started like, we started making less and less money, making less and less, and eventually we'll break it even. And eventually now we're just bleeding out. And then over the last 2 years, I've been bleeding out. And over the last 12 months, I've been really working very hard back into like the consistent daily grind, the focus, trying to figure out acquisition, getting back into creating organic content, and things are starting to get together. I'm like in the flow. I'm pretty productive over the last 2-3 months, and I'm pretty happy. But I wouldn't be surprised that the moment I crack the code and I'm cash flow positive again, in 6 months' time, I'm gonna maybe go through the same existential question. But I think I would have the experience to be like, hey, the last time I had something good going, I put my foot off the pedal and I regret it a lot. Let's not make the same mistake this time, but maybe I'll be hit with a different sort of question.
Yeah, yeah, 100% for sure. And do you think that um that phenomenon of bleeding out across time, do you think that that is directly correlated or even caused by you focusing in on that other, building up that other content, self-development, the stuff that, was fulfilling you?
I believe so. All the hot inbound leads we're getting from or the niche e-commerce YouTube videos we're making, those started to dwindle. And looking back, we highly relied on the organic inbound leads. And I think I also had the question of like, hey, I don't like the ups and downs of YouTube. Let me figure out acquisition, cold traffic. Like that feels like I have a real business if I can figure out cold traffic. So I wasted, not wasted, but it felt like I wasted a year trying to figure out webinars, VSLs, cold traffic, yes, building a sales team, only to come back full circle and get back into organic marketing, which I'm sort of focusing on now. But I think I did take lessons where we do have a more robust sort of outreach team, outbound. So with the outbound team, I guess we can sort of break even or make a small loss with zero social media presence. So now as we're adding in social media presence on top of it, I feel like it's going to like add fuel to the fire. So it's going to be like a version 2 of what I had prior, hopefully.
Yes, yes, absolutely. The live and learn method, right?
So yeah, like when you talked about hitting 40, thinking about your agency, that story I just shared came to mind. Like, how do you feel sort of coming into 40? Do you still enjoy the agency space? Tell me about launching the podcast. That's sort of what I did during that pivot, launched the podcast. So it's a very sort of, there's parallels. I definitely would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, totally. So, um, before making the decision to spend time on, um, before making the decision to spend time on developing my personal brand, I fortunately, I guess, through enough fuck ups in the past, knew that, had some voice in my head that said, you got to stabilize this ship before you let the other ship set sail, right? Because if this guy's rocky and that guy's rocky, then you're going to have to start fighting battles, and one will always win out because priorities work that type of a way, right? So I very intentionally did. So some background context as well. Last year, I also, besides being CEO of the company, took ownership of our chief revenue officer role, and as part of that, headed up the marketing efforts, mainly from a, and I knew that we needed to approach it mainly from a content first, value first standpoint, rather than cold traffic, direct response, you know, testimonial, book a call now to work with the agency, or some type of case study, book a call now, because especially in the agency game, so much of it is a reputation piece too, right? Um, so based on that, what we set out to do was answer the question: can we have a regular podcast segment or right hook once a week? Plain and simple. Can we get our act together to, during the week, plan out what the talking point is, and the end of the week, shoot it. Bare minimum, just do that. It's almost like saying to a fat person or an out of shape person, just like, can you do 15 minutes of going for a walk? I'm not asking for too much. I don't care about your squats or whatever. Just do that once a week. If you can do that and you can do that for 4 weeks, then let's move up to the next difficulty level, right? So that was what we did. We are now 30 something episodes in, so 30 something weeks of doing that. So that's kind of stabilized itself. And based off of that, we can extract reels because we have an editing team within our marketing team. So we've got that completely sorted. And that really helps to go, okay, we've got this kind of sort of stabilized and stabilized enough so that we can just start making smaller iterations in there. Also helps me like get back into the cadence of being on camera again. So that worked out nicely. And then from that, I went, okay, cool. I think this is stabilized enough. And I've gotten enough learnings out of this to then be able to take into my own pod, which is very much an interview show kind of pod, not so much sometimes they have like solo pods and stuff like that, right? So the next challenge for Right Hook is starting to add the whole guest management portion because a lot of the podcasts so far had just been internal, right? Can we even wrangle our own people and manage the schedule so that it all aligns and we can actually talk about stuff? Then the next progression up is to go, can we start actually having the logistics and the infrastructure to manage guest schedules, requests, for them to come on, plan out what the show looks like, etc. So that's Right Hook kind of sorted. And then me being able to see whether this small little seed can break the soil and grow into something. At least that way I can manage my headspace a bit better when approaching these two different things. So one nourishes the soul, right? And then the other one kind of nourishes the mind, I guess, right? So my personal pod, I get to talk to interesting people, whether that's appearing on their ones like this, for example, or just talking to people because one of my core values is curiosity. I was always that kid in school. I think if you're anyone that is Chinese, Japanese, any type of yellow skinned bastard like we are, will know how if you ask stupid questions in class, teacher would be like, stop asking stupid questions. I was that kid that would always ask stupid questions. And I kind of still am that kid, right? That would always infinitely curious, but why? But how? How does that kind of work? How does this kind of work? Which on the agency side really doesn't fit that well because if you're positioning yourself like an expert, what the audience wants is they want to be able to ask that questions and you're the one answering. So that's where I think it started to get a bit stale in terms of the man, every time it's always us giving the tips and us having all the answers. Where is my learning beyond the realm of direct to consumer, e-commerce, online marketing, analytics, data, creative? There's still so much there to be able to play with. But the reality is, I don't have the company position to be able to play with it with my own hands anymore because I have a team and they're the ones interacting with clients. So I just become the mouthpiece to coax those people in. So where can I go to start playing with my hands again, get it dirty, and learn new things and suck at it? I'm very good at sucking at things. In fact, sometimes I stay there for a bit too long because it's fun for me to go like, ooh, why do I still suck at it? Why am I still sucking at it? That guy over there is doing something different. That chick over there is like doing something. I'm gonna try a bit of that and a bit of that. Ooh, I don't feel as sucky anymore. Now I'm gonna ratchet it up a bit more. So I think it's just baked into my DNA.
Do you have a clear vision of sort of putting together a ship, having a clear sort of motto or purpose for that ship and what that ship is sort of meant to do? And once you sort of have that ship steady and going, then you sort of jump ship and you start building another ship, and sort of repeat that process. And this other ship is going to have a different purpose and you're going to slowly build it. Did you make mistakes in the past where you didn't do it that way and you did two, three things and there wasn't a direction? And yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah. I think that behavior plagues any type of like gung ho go getter. In professional terms, it's high achiever, right? But really, it's people that we tend to try to bite off more than we can chew. And I think as humans in general, we're fairly poor estimators of time. You know what I mean? Like that age old type of a thing. You hire a contractor to reno your house, or you get a new marketing agency to maybe like a web firm or to design your website, and everyone on that's paying the money always has the question, how long do you think this will take? And then the other side will go, she'll be right, 4 weeks, right? And then 4 weeks turns into 7 or 8 or 9 because of unforeseen things. So I think in general, we're fairly poor estimators of time, and that's why I have so much respect for project managers and project coordinators, because they come into any project and ask the question like, what if this goes wrong? What if that doesn't show up? What if it rains on the day that the concrete is meant to be set down? Like, that type of stuff. So there's that. And then the other part being the tendency to, because it's the work of the mind. I have this saying all the time. Um, Most people have faced, or just maybe as a soundbite, people in general tend to underestimate their physical strength and overestimate their mental strength. So what do I mean? And I see this all the time. Um, in 2019 and early 2020, I was very out of shape. I was 100 kilos, chubby, right? So I needed to go back into the gym. Right now, it's become such a ritual and a routine for me that there's not a day that I miss the gym if I'm not traveling or if I'm not ill. And so it's gotten to a point where people have come up to me because they see me around. I'm like almost like the furniture at the gym, and they'll go, "Hey, I'm thinking about lifting this much or doing that." And I go, "You're picking up the weights. They're too light for you." Oh, no, 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 I can't lift that. You're underestimating your physical strength because there is an immediate feedback loop, and it looks a bit embarrassing, or it feels a bit embarrassing when you can't lift it. So you play it safe on that side. Mental strength, though, we're sitting there and we listen to gurus or buy courses about like setting your life or intentionality or setting goals, and it's like, write down all of your goals, right? And write down all the things you're going to do to kind of hit those goals. Don't censor yourself and really go for it. So we go for it, and our brain starts to go, wait a second, like, one, because we're writing it like a list, there is no weightage. So one doesn't look as heavier than the other. So it's just one line. Everyone is one line only, equal. And then two, you start looking at that and going, hey, now that I've written out, that doesn't seem so hard. Let's go. Until the reality hits. And then that's when we find ourselves going, ah, crap, I really overestimated my mental strength, didn't I? Or like my mental capability. It actually does take a lot of mental load and capacity to hold this project here and have as much energy as that project there and have as much energy, or to start two different YouTube channels, right? Where one is about e-commerce and drop shipping and online marketing and paid social, and then the other one on self-development. You really have to almost become a different person. So anyway, point being, the it's something to wrestle with as opposed to say, oh well, that's just how it is.
I love that. You talked about sort of positioning and what people know you guys as. And I think that's sort of a mistake I made where I remember going to a friend's sort of house party. He's a DJ, he plays a saxophone. And I'm talking to his friends, oh, how do you know Zach? And this and that. I was like, oh, we had Zach play at our wedding. Or like, oh, Zach sort of, I'm a photographer at this club, so Zach sort of came through. So everyone knew that Zach was a DJ. So if anyone needed a DJ, they'll be like, yeah, hit up my friend Zach. They knew exactly what he did. And I realized my friends have no idea what I do. And that's definitely a problem. And I think that's sort of like now I've started really creating very niche content, value-based content, educational content, moving away from all the lifestyle, podcast, travel type content that was just too broad. It was sort of this broad entrepreneurial type content. But you're like it's taken me 4 or 5 years to like figure out this mistake. But you're sort of on the head, like what.
Oh, because you're talking to the after the 7 years of getting smacked on the face by self-inflicted silly decisions. Um, I think it did help a little bit that I used to work in so my previous career, I used to work in television, right? After television, I kind of started a tech company that went nowhere fast, and then moved into started the agency. So this is my like third venture. But when I was working in TV, I was always working in crew and within the production office realm, right? And then also in the camera department. So I've always been very like audience focused. And even when I'm consuming content, or I'm watching stuff instead of just saying the word consuming content. If I'm watching stuff or listening to stuff or just looking at a speaker or an authority or something like that, there are so few that are able to do the Tim Ferriss thing of like 4 hour work week and then some chef thing and then some body thing and have people able to follow along. Like even the greats and the elites in the author realm and the writer realm and the mass media personality realm look up to Tim Ferriss to go like, I don't know how you're doing it. It's almost like if Beyonce went straight out like first year, second year, went country, went jazz, went rock, went metal, and went hip hop and R&B. We'd be like, girl, we don't know what the heck you're doing, right? So it definitely was a lot of mistakes along the way, a lot of very small learning lessons, and a lot of the mistakes just because I'm hard headed that way and not that smart of a man. I had to kind of suck shit 8, 9, 12, 20 times before I was like, oh, that's right. If only I kind of figured this out sooner. But a lot of meandering. It's the point I'm trying to make here.
Very relatable. What was the catalyst for you to start that agency, that third venture? Was it just like a way to like, hey, people are making money through SMMA, I need some cash, or was there a different catalyst?
Um, I don't know what it is. So Uh, it really was just things landing on my lap and me. I wouldn't have phrased it this way back when it earlier in my career or earlier in my life, but now the best way for me to phrase it is the universe just put it on my lap, and these times I just was not stubborn and actually listened. So the agency thing happened because I was putting myself out there as a fractional CMO after the tech venture wrapped up and wound down because I just had to face reality. I managed to pitch like Guy Kawasaki in person. I was trying to get this thing working. Like I managed to also not necessarily formally pitch, but sit down with the previous Shark Tank guy, Steve Baxter, and he knew about my startup because he's also based here in Brisbane. But we just weren't able to raise capital, and it was like capital intensive because it was tech. As I was consulting and being a fractional CMO, taking my learnings from spending my own money or burning my own money trying to get this startup off the ground, user acquisition, customer acquisition, SaaS, free trial, all that type of stuff. And it was marketplace too, which is like the hardest one in the tech world, supposedly, to try to start. So, um, as part of that work, I was also naturally being I think a lot of our audiences would relate, the one that would join communities on like Facebook groups and be taking courses and stuff like that, was part of a Neil Patel Facebook group. And the moderator one week said, "Hey, everyone, share where you're from. You might find a fellow community member that's close by to you, and like have a small little meetup or something." And so this one guy who I'd noticed in the community always posting fairly smart stuff, and I'm like, who the heck is this guy, this Scott dude? And finds like when that post came out, he was like, I'm on the Gold Coast. So I DM'd him immediately, and then we met up for Korean fried chicken on the Gold Coast because why not? It's Korean fried chicken. And managed to go, hey, we seem to be aligned on a few things here. We're both in back then our like 30s, uh, seemed to be same stage of career, had previous ventures that really didn't flourish the way that we were hoping for it to flourish. And also a bit wiser, right? We're not like early 20s, super gung ho and stuff like that. So decided to say to ourselves, let's not rush it and go into business with a stranger from the internet and start signing papers, registering on ASIC and all that type of stuff. Let's just see whether we can actually do this and see if we can close like 6 clients in the next, I forget what we said to ourselves, like 10 weeks or something like that. If we can generate some money first, or at least generate the promise of money, then let's incorporate and all that. This was how like on paper silly it was for me. He asked me the question like, oh, but how do we deal with that? Should we like open up a joint bank account or whatever? I go, listen, you've already got it like your LLC thing going on for your other. Let's just put it under that. If you're gonna screw me with the money, you're gonna screw me anyway. So right, at least I find out quite quickly. I didn't say that, but that was what I was thinking in my head. And he went, "You sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure, no problem." We ended up closing, I think, like 6 clients in just like 3, 4 weeks, and then just went, "Oh shit, we better like turn this to an actual thing because otherwise it's just all like sticky tape together." There's not really any type of registered company or anything like that. And we neither one of us came from agency background, which I always had very big imposter syndrome at the start to go, shit, we've never worked in agency at all. Not small agency, not big box agency. We've hired agencies before, me from the venture side and then him because he had his own e-commerce brand. But we've never worked in agency land. And was only maybe 2 to 3 years after starting the agency that I had uh, a trusted friend and mentor say to me, maybe not coming from agency world actually did you good because you're not locked into all these practices that you believe are the only way to do things. So it was very much learning on the job, very much learning on the job.
How did you guys go about getting those 6 first clients within the first 3 to 4 weeks?
Exactly what I said earlier with the whole like DTC Dojo thing, concentric circles, friends, family, and fools. So to go, I just went on Facebook and said, "Hey, we're starting this thing. I just want to see if anyone, um, I just want to see if anyone is interested in getting help with like their Facebook ads." And back then we just went full shotgun mode, lead gen, service based businesses, D2C, tech, info. Whoever had, that whole exercise that they tell most service providers to do, which is like, and even just as a branding exercise, if you're starting a business, like write down what your ideal customer persona looks like, your ICP, right? And facetiously, what I wrote down was anyone that can rub 2 coins together is our ICP because right now it's all about money, right? Just to be able to justify and say we actually have a business here, not some kind of hobby. Because we really wanted to start a business, not just like a side gig or like some type of like a pay my own salary type of business, right? Like a sustenance business. We wanted to turn it into like a business that actually turns into an asset that we can flip in the future, etc. So friends, family, fools, we just went out and said, within our own circles and networks, would anyone even want to have a chat about this? And just went through the funnel, right? Like put it out there, who's interested, come have a chat. And really, we didn't have like the super packaged up sales deck or like, any type of sales process or pitch whatsoever. It pretty much was like, okay, so, well, what are you working on? Are you running ads right now? How's your organic going? Can we look at your website? And just kind of felt it out as we went. But perhaps because it wasn't a slick sales conversation, scripted and key talking points, etc., there was a bit of a genuineness and authenticity that came through to go like, holy heck, these guys are actually spending the time to like ask me all of these questions, whereas all these other agencies just want to tell me what I should do. So maybe there's something here, and that's I think potentially why we managed to get that foot in the door to be able to start doing those things and working with certain brands. And then after that phase, um, at some point we went, you know what, it's difficult to build best practice and have SOPs by going so broad. Let's pick a lane. And direct to consumer e-commerce happened to be that lane that we went, okay, let's put our stake in the ground here and specialize here. We can always go to the rest later, but let's figure out a way to specialize here first. The whole like bite off more than you can chew part, the it's like, oh, we can always go back later. We can always kind of set that thing. 7 years later, we're still here trying to figure this thing out. You know what I mean? Right. So there's that component for sure. But yeah, that's how we kind of started off that game and the types of the approach that we took to try to just generate new business.
Talking about ICP, sort of the ideal customer, how important is it? Like, for example, for Right Hook, do you guys have the ideal e-commerce customer that you sort of look for? I guess to selfishly ask my own example, like over the last 7 years, I've noticed that the ideal customer for people who want to learn how to start their own e-commerce business sort of falls in 2 pools. It's either they're sort of in corporate, they're in their 40s, they want a career change, they don't like what they're doing, they have resources, they have the capital, but they sort of lack a bit of, they desperately don't need to make it work. And the second pool is sort of people that are living paycheck to paycheck, desperate to make it work, very determined, but they have no resources or little to no resources.
Yep.
And this pool of people definitely have a high success rate, much lower AOV, and require much more work. They're going to be messaging me and the team every day. Whereas the first pool is much higher AOV, much less work required, but much lower success rate. A lot of them go into the program, they buy a book, and they don't read the book. So now I'm torn between both ends. Do I go for the money? But then, like, how do I even create content targeting? Well, I guess I can create e-commerce content targeting people in their 40s, but then, so I'm torn. Any thoughts?
Mm. Now that you've listed out the side by side comparison, which one seems I okay, I'll set the premise first and then I'll re-ask that question. Very facetiously last year at a friend's conference, they invited me onto a podcast, and in the moment, it was like 11:30 p.m. when we did the podcast. So in the moment, in my like half sleepy state, I came up with this metric just on the spot. And the metric that we were talking about for the purposes of the conversation of that podcast, the metric was number of headaches per dollar earned, right? Number of headaches per dollar earned. So if we apply that metric to your side by side comparison that you just brought up just there, would you like more or less headaches per dollar earned as the way that Andy lives his life for the next 10 years?
That gives me a clear answer. Yeah, it would be the first pool. That's going to be the less headaches per dollar spent. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So then um because it seems like, and I totally get it, the success rate portion nourishes the sense of accomplishment, right? To say, hey, like these guys, there's so much nobility in saying, man, these guys really made me work for it. I'm having to answer shit at like 10:30 p.m. after they've had their like fourth joint before they go to sleep or whatever it might be. And I'm just being facetious here, but the point being that because they made me grind, that success feels so much sweeter. But boy, that AOV is low. But a certain part of the hard worker brain goes, man, that hard work is worth it. But then there's here this pocket where literally there are people that want, like, they're just throwing money at you, but it doesn't feel like it's that much of a sense of accomplishment. Maybe I don't know how your internal core values and wiring goes, but maybe it's a bit like, that's a bit too easy. They might not be as successful, but they are just hand over fist signing up for my stuff, and they are have all the intentions in the world to show up and do the work. So, and the reason why I think having this type of clarity, you bring up such an amazing case study. The way that marketing material speaks to someone who has spent, if they're in their 40s, maybe 2 decades in corporate world, the type of copy and the type of compelling desire and reasoning and motivation for taking up your value prop versus the ones who are maybe 1 to 2 to 3 years in corporate world, maybe not even corporate world. They're still, like in part-time world trying to find their feet, early stages of their career, so dramatically different. And to bring this back home, because we don't only look at it from a demographical standpoint or a business profile standpoint, we also look at it from a psychographic standpoint because of the fact that we are working with clientele, not just selling a course, for example, right? So success rate is also a very big, meaningful thing for us too. So the one of our core, our anti-ideal customer profile is if we get a whiff, even a small little sniff of the fact that they're approaching us on the agency side as a Hail Mary. In other words, they're bleeding cash, things are super tight, like somehow they've lost traffic, and if right hook doesn't work out, they are dead in the water. Then we very politely say, hey, listen, it seems like you are better off allocating that cash to something else because it's such dire straits. We are not an agency that is suited for ER, like emergency room type surgeries and procedures, right? If your brand is like an athlete that needs to get to the next level and start winning nationals or going into the international stage or going to the Olympics, we can get you there. But if it's ER status, it's like you need an ER. Like, there are dedicated firms with turnaround CEOs, turnaround CFOs, right, that turn a company around. So that's one of our ICP line items for sure.
And how does that sort of affect the content you create? For example, if you were like top of mind, people would think, okay, we should create content on Facebook ad strategies, product research, how to build a good offer, but that's just going to attract the under $1 million type e-commerce business. And if you wanted to attract, say, 1 million plus and sort of get, I don't know, talk to CMOs or talk to busy founders, they're not on Facebook searching strategies or YouTube searching strategies. I guess, yeah, how do you attack your ICP and who is your ICP?
Yeah, for sure. So, you'd be very surprised. It definitely surprised me, but I was very surprised at how much, or how small teams still remain, even at the um, under 10 mil annual revenue um, type company and type brand, where some of them are still very much like founder driven and founder driven from a paid acquisition. Like they're still hands on doing the paid acquisition part of it, for example. So, one, there's that. The content piece versus the business generation piece, I tend to decouple. So what I mean by that is, okay, if we had, let's talk about our outreach and networking efforts. How does it usually go? It usually goes like this: some type of outreach to say, hey, problem statement. This is our experience, and is this something that interests you? Let's kind of talk about it. Or outreach could be something like, hey, you came up on our radar because we really like this article that you wrote or this recent post that you did. By the way, we created some resource speaking to exactly this thing that you're talking about. If you would like it, like, enter the conversation, right? So a call to conversation. So two things can happen when we receive a message like that. Three things can happen when we receive a message like that. Number one, we straight up ignore it. Bow bow. Number two is we don't think much of it and we just reply, be like, yeah, sure, why not? Number three is, who the hell is this person? Let me go find out a bit more. So then when they tap the let me go find out a bit more, and they happen to see whether that is LinkedIn page or whether that is like Instagram reels or like profile or whether that is YouTube channel, then that's where the legitimate, oh, these guys seem fairly legit. So that's the way I view the content from the agency standpoint, is really very much like oh, these guys seem to be legit, as opposed to using that as a hinging all of the pressure on generating new business on the content portion only. It really is, I see it more as a supplemental rather than a staple.
Got it. I see Right Hook, you guys have been going really hard on like Instagram content, YouTube content. Has that been a conscious shift? When did you guys go hard on organic? And how big of an impact does that play? Do you have like a cold sort of acquisition strategy? What does the whole picture look like when it comes to acquisition?
For sure. We went hard on it at that same point in time when I said I retook over as chief revenue officer, head of growth, because I knew it needed to happen. And before I stepped into that, I was always like pushing and prodding and asking for it to happen. And then I went, you know what? Let me just kind of take a stab at this and see whether it's a doable thing. And that was what we were talking about before. It's just once a week. And then our editing team finds ways to kind of slice out portions from that once a week. That's all it really is. And the objective there really was to go, how do we bring a very conversational tone, show that we are people that have flaws, that also are like trying our best and know a thing or two about, growing brands, right? And bring that to the forefront on a regular cadence and see if it actually resonates out there. So again, very experimental mindset. Um, that's number one. On the outreach side, that is going to be our next phase moving into next year, or tail end of this year, next year, where because we have Dojo and because we're starting to create a lot of consumable IP rather than internal kind of like Google Doc, I guess it's a when you're feeding yourself, you don't really zhuzh up the dish that much and make sure everything's on there with your little tweezers, like Master Chef style. You just like, I just got to put this in my mouth. So instead of internal docs, we're creating a lot of IP where it is a lot more publicly consumable. There's a brand treatment against it. There's design. There's that extra thought put into it that can then arm our outreach efforts to be more relevant for that type of account-based marketing. In terms of our sweet spot, we actually resist going into any kind of realm of enterprise, or when it starts becoming big box, right? And they have multiple layers of bureaucracy and multiple layers of decision making. Our team really doesn't shine in that area whatsoever. So anywhere between the $3 to $5 million range on the lower end, all the way up to, say, you're really starting to get to the 10, 15, 20 mil range. We tend to kind of cap ourselves off there because at a certain point, when you get to that size, really, do you want to have an agency, or are you really starting to consider that in-house team so that you have that fluidity and that frequency and that speed, right? So that is a reality that we have to address and we have to be very conscious of, because of the fact that it's not like, I think it'd be a different story. We were like a data team or an analytics team where you have those like big box enterprise level and you have the specialist thing come in for that project and then see you later. Or if we were a content studio, for example, same type of a deal. Or if you were like a tube science where it very much is performance based, creative, you have to minimally spend like $1 million a month and they are just generating their money in a different type of a way. But we're not structured that way. So knowing our sweet spot and kind of sticking to that sweet spot really is a very, very key thing for us without trying to bite off more than we can chew.
Got it. You talked about sort of the different models. Within sort of the agency space, how do you guys balance between like a retainer monthly model versus performance based? Do you mix the both? Is there a different option?
So there's a fixed component and then there is an ad spend under management component. Previous to iOS 14, we were on a um, in-platform reported revenue component, right? Because we like the trustability of those numbers were still very much there. Um, Verifiability, I guess. And then post iOS 14, we kind of went, okay, well, how do we figure this thing out during this very funky time? Okay, let's do it from an ad spend component and then set certain targets to as the counterbalance to go, we don't want to be the type of firm that just every week that a brand founder or like a client partner meets with our team, it's just another sales pitch for like, oh, so are we going to increase the ad spend? Are we going to increase the ad spend? We want to make sure that there's a bit of guardrails to go, let's hit this target and this KPI. Let's make sure that that target one is agreed upon mutually and then also um, aggressive enough, but then also realistic enough. So smart goals, right? The whole SMART goals thing. Um, and then based off of that, that's how we start. That's how we interface and work with the brands that we take on, especially if it's any type of paid traffic, right? And then we have our email team, which is a whole other. That one's just flat fee, really simple packages to understand. But if there's traffic involved, we want to make sure that there is some type of carrot put in front of our team so that that continuous incentivization is there.
And then with your clients, do you just focus on meta ads or do you also do Google ads or display ads? And how did you guys go about getting into those other sort of channels?
So Meta is our flagship, and that was really how the company got started and founded. We have a very small Google team, and then we have a kind of medium-sized uh, email marketing team, right? So kind of the three different sizes of dogs. One Jack Russell, we got a Spaniel, and then we got like a Great Dane kind of a thing. In terms of breaking into different types of channels, and like there's something to be said around what works versus what the customer would like to make work. I think case in point, TikTok ads. For a while there, everyone was like, TikTok ads, you got to be on TikTok ads and TikTok shop and this, that, and the other. Why aren't you guys doubling down? And can't we allocate more budget over to TikTok? And we just let the data kind of speak for itself and go, let's look at it from an ad efficiency standpoint and go, let's look at where Meta's at, or let's look at where TikTok's at. As much as the creative is native to these platforms, how well can those platforms actually bring back revenue and make choices that way, right? So we have anything that sits under paid social sits with a paid social team. And then anything that sits within the realm of like the YouTube's displays, searches, et cetera, that sits with their paid search team. And at one point, we actually gave it a good hot go at starting an influencer and content creator management service as well in the midst of COVID. This was like maybe 2021, yeah, 2021 ish. And the person that we installed to try to head up that division, unfortunately, within the first 3 months, she was so good at her job that a big box PR firm lured her away with the promise of being able to attend all the influencer parties and rub shoulders with celebrities and all that. And I'm just like, we don't got that. So sorry. I think you really should go take that job. It sounds like a more exciting prospect than what we have here.
When you built out the Google team, did you just hire someone that was just way better at Google than you, and or did you figure it out a bit on your own? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, mixture of both. But definitely, uh, and keeping in mind back then we had the capital to invest into the overhead of bringing that person in before they generated income, right? So we were able to have a bit of a runway to be able to have that occur, and then we built up the portfolio accordingly, let sales catch up. But even then, I don't think that we were as intelligent about it as we could have been. Perhaps also because of the fact that it was first go, mistakes needed to be made. We were very much green under the nose, but I think we were too careful with our capital allocation. What I mean by that is, if I could go again, I would have insisted upon hiring a director level person rather than a high level like senior strategist or like experienced strategist. So someone who has actually had career experience building out and managing a department, a service line. So not only practitioner, but then also have leadership and management experience, not potential, not talent, not like I see some opportunity here, actual proven experience, because then they're not drawing the blueprint as they are building the building.
Over the last 8 7 8 years, have you guys always been cash flow positive? Like, has there been periods where the acquisition process just stopped working, lots of clients just dipped?
I mean, I could not have been blessed with a more appropriate window of time to have started a business that actually went somewhere. 2017, 2018, 2019, it was like finding our feet, getting our messaging right, building up a bit of a reputation, whatever, like inevitably you build up a reputation. Whether it's positive or not, you're building up a reputation. As long as you're in the market, people talk about you, right? Um, so really having that. 2020 coming in, COVID occurred, and I think anyone in e-commerce would appreciate what COVID did for our industry and how everyone was at home drinking their home delivered wines with their credit card out in hand and just going bananas with all the stimulus checks. So that occurred, and then iOS 14 came along and threw a curveball into the whole mix. So had to navigate those waters. And the cookie apocalypse was another thing that got brought up into the mix also. Algorithmic changes on the meta side. So a lot of headwinds and tailwinds, right? And then most recently, in the most recent years, economic tightening, cost of living going up, stimulus checks like ran out. I think I saw a statistic, a chart recently where the headline of that chart said it's officially over, and Americans have spent all of the money that came from those stimulus checks, like just across the board, and now are like dipping into the negative from those savings. So that stat was interesting. So it's very interesting times in here, and then we've got AI going through as well. So point being, yes, absolutely. Our ad account got banned, like our agency acquisition ad account got banned, straight up ban. No warning, no notification, no like slap on the wrist. You better change this before. before we do something harsher. And that happened, I want to say somewhere around early last year, Q1 last year sometime. It's just straight up ban. And we never were able to recover it, even though we have the most fantastic reps at Meta who replied to us on a Sunday when it happened. But because it's a compliance team, which was a whole other different team, it just never went anywhere. And timing wise, it wasn't good timing because it was only after that thing happened that I got introduced to, months after, I got introduced to, start working with Meta more closely and started getting introduced to like director level people who are then like, oh, why didn't you tell me? And I'm like, I didn't tell you because I didn't know you back then. That's why I didn't tell you. So yes, that really just imagine a imagine a luxurious fountain that you built yourself of dark chocolate that is tasty and good and just like feeds your soul. And then one day someone walks by and over the weekend when you're not looking just goes and all of it just stops. We really had to recalibrate for sure.
Wow. How did you guys go about? Did you rebuild a new sort of Facebook ad account? Did you use your own personal account? Did you use like a team member? And then are you at a point where you have an agency ad account nowadays with unlimited spend? What was that whole sort of journey like?
So did not use personal account, just rebuilt another agency account for, and this is not business manager, right? So this is just like the agency advertising account. So it's not like any of our clients or any of our brands got affected at all. It's just the account that we use for our direct response advertising for acquiring new clients. That was the thing that got banned. And so from that, the counter action was, okay, let's rebuild again. Let's start from scratch. Let's like put back as much as we can. And then, once you have that type of backpedal, that was also the same time when I went, okay, I'm going to step into this chief revenue officer thing and figure things out. This serves up the perfect opportunity for me to highlight to the rest of the team how we cannot be reliant on a single source of new business generation. Uh, Now is my time to strike and insist on us focusing on the content piece while we rebuild the ad account piece, right? And then really starting to change our the way that we communicate ourselves to be value first, content first, um, humans first, rather than testimonial book a call first.
How did you guys get a new ad account or
Oh
agency?
no, literally just like in business manager, just like spin up a new ad account and just start from zero and rebuild the whole like you can only spend this much for now and after you prove that you can repay it. So uh that whole do-si-do that we had to do, that old chestnut.
Does the whole funnel of case study testimonial book a call, does that still work today? How are the shop rates? Just talking to people in this space, it feels like the cost per booking has gone up, the shop rates for the booking have gone down, no matter how many follow-up emails you do. Are people sick of that sort of funnel? What has your experience been?
I think that right there, what you're talking about is where a content marketer type brain looking at that problem can start to um, really unlock a few paradigms. So, what I mean is this: if it is let's talk about the users on Meta in general, or just even potential customers out there in the world, right? Let's use the analogy of that is a very wide ocean, a very, very wide ocean. So and we happen to have this boat that's chugging along, and we're trying to cast out nets and bring on some of these fish. Unfortunately for us, we can't just like grab them and bring them on the ship. We have to kind of coax them and sing to them and be like, hey, jump onto the ship, fish. So, following that analogy, the fact of the matter is, because of the type of profile that we're going after, the in market ready to buy individuals take up only a certain percentage of the possible audience. There are brands that are locked into contracts with their existing agency. There are brands that are kind of just dubious and skeptical about agencies in general. right? There are ones that have never even heard of the agency before. There are the ones that then just need a bit of convincing and coaxing to go, okay, I'm going to give these guys a call. And then there are the ones that need to be convinced that they even need an agency in the first place because they someone needs to knock them over the head and say, "Aren't you sick and tired of doing 12 jobs? Like, you're 3 years into building this brand. Don't you think it's time to maybe relax your grip a little bit and let someone else do the picking and packing and the logistics and the social media posts and replying to comments and running the paid media?" Like, so those are all the different types of pockets or areas in the ocean that we can go to and different types of fish. So if it's just a testimonial or a case study, redirecting to a lander where they might be a VSL, whatever it might be, but just trying to convince them to book a call, you're really only addressing the ones that need to hear that message because they're already in market looking for an agency. Meanwhile, there are the ones that, so in other words, they're looking to get married. Meanwhile, there are the ones where you have to build a relationship first for them to even be open to the notion of dating you or having some association with you whatsoever before they're ready to kind of make a commitment or inquire about making a commitment. So hence why the podcast and hence why having all those different types of pieces out there and then being able to go, okay, well, let's make sure that that is out in the realm too, and let's make sure we put some spend in amplifying that, and then have different types of messaging to go, hey, instead of the direct response piece, why not have a piece of content that is just educating them and telling them, hey, we listen, here's how we did this one super cool, awesome thing. Here's how you can do it too. If you want to find out more about how to actually do it step by step by step by step by step, click on this thing and we'll take you to a some type of a lead magnet download piece. And then our sales team can kind of touch base afterwards and go like, hey, was that helpful for you? Would you like to have a chat? If you have any questions, would you like to interact with the team? Which just seems so much more permission based and so much more respectful of someone's time rather than just cramming a bunch of like testimonials. Look at how awesome we are. We didn't say it, someone else said it, but really consumers are sophisticated enough to go like, well, you made the ad and you made the edit for all that, you probably cut out all the bits where they talk bad about you, something that they know what game is being played here, right? And what I found also, because half our team services the US North America region and half our team services the Australasia region, selling to Aussies versus selling to Americans, very different. Very, very different, right? Speaking with an assertive tone, coming across like a Grant Cardone or something, does not land that well with us Aussies because we want to be able to kind of have a yarn, have a like a trustable person that we can talk to, a bit more grounded, down to earth, not this kind of guru style like way. Whereas over there, that just seems like someone who is not self-confident, right? So over here, it's self-deprecating humor. It's taking yourself down a peg. It's approaching it with more of a lighter tone. Whereas over there, just go for gold. They know the game, they love the game, and they're all part of the game. So very dramatically different in that type of way.
You talked about the Australia and US market, how you guys service both markets. How did you guys figure out economy of scales? If there's two different markets, there's two different styles of marketing, two different time zones. Does the same marketing team run ads for both, or do you have it separated? How did that work?
Same marketing team for both. The struggle that we have right now is we are underrepresented on the Aussie front. So what do I mean? Ray is American. He's based in Nashville. I am Chinese. I don't look like a Guilo, and I don't sound like an Aussie. So it lends itself. It really, in my mind, if I was a marketing consultant looking at this, uh, one of the things that I would recommend this agency do is go, you need more Aussie voices on your content, right? You need more of that type of a tone. So we're just wearing it right now until we figure out some ways to start bringing in more Aussie voices. And I mean, you know this firsthand, I think, running your own podcast. Not everyone is cut out to feel comfortable doing this. They kind of get awkward or they don't know how to deliver the lines or they start looking at the camera and like, this is how I run Facebook ads. Step one, they psych themselves out. So, and that's what I mean. That type of like geographical differences. Americans are so enamored and accustomed to media, building personal brand, being a content creator, all that type of stuff. Whereas Aussies are more like, we this is behind the scenes. I don't want to please don't make a big fuss out of me. So even trying to get some of our Aussie team members onto podcasts with us or doing videos with us or sharing their story, it's so understated that sometimes they end up underselling what it is that we've done or underselling what it is that we do, what they've achieved, what they accomplished, and they go, "Oh, what do you mean? I just kind of did it. It's no big deal. Please don't look at me."
You talked about sort of the whole sales process, the ads, having it be contextual, hit that sort of small piece of the ocean. When I was trying to figure out cold traffic, I had a friend that was in sales. He had a finance, sales, mortgage sort of type background, brought him on, spent a lot of money on cold ads, probably spending $10,000 a month. And over the year, like I got a lot of value, but we didn't really crack it. We might have sort of got somewhere where we had something that might have worked, but I got a lot of lessons from it. Could I have easily just thrown 120K at a sales manager to build something like that? Or like, let's say if I had 200,000, could I even get a head of sales or a director of sales to build that out? Or at that, not really.
And this is for the ecom education company.
Yes. Acquisition, cold traffic.
Right. So let's break this thing down and look at it from a prospect standpoint, right? So if you had a sales manager, say you hire me as your sales manager, and boss, I happen to be our first closer for the first 3 years of the agency that I just left and exited. So I want to come work for you now, Andy. How how do you see the pathway of me reaching out to these people? Like how would they even self-identify to say I work in corporate and I have this desire? So what would my email outreach list look like? Or am I just spraying and praying to go, hey, I know you work in corporate. Do you want to leave your job? But this is not a recruiting thing. Do you want to start your own business? Do you right? Do you think that they would be easily identifiable in a sales manager kind of outreach setting? If not, perhaps the content pathway, which has proven to work out for you so well, and also perhaps doubling down on the LinkedIn platform might be the way for these individuals to self identify. Let's take off this e-commerce education hat for a moment and let's pretend that there is let's create a new company, you and I, and let's call it DNA Corporate Wellness. The D and Andy, DNA Corporate Wellness. And what we care about, or what the types of people we want to attract, are the ones that work a stressful job, they're high performing executives, and they really want some mindfulness, some stress management tools, and some wellness. That realm of like wellness and health, that realm in their lives. And let's come up with a marketing plan. Well, if we got a sales manager, then very likely to do like, okay, well, let's bring on some one-on-one type clients to coach them through their wellness practice. Same The same issue that sales manager might face, which is like, how do they self-identify? So maybe they might go to marketing or events or something and say like, well, maybe if you guys offered up like 1 day free sessions at a Brisbane office for like, I don't know, BDO or for Accenture, and say, hey, are your employees highly stressed and do all like, would you like to increase productivity and all that type of stuff? But it helps with that company's productivity. Whereas the e-commerce one, it's almost like, hey, we want to do this one day workshop where we want to convince your employees to not do work here and start their passion project. So difficult to be able to do that type of event stuff too. So really, it comes down to then going, hey, sharing stories of, this is Bob. He was a COO for 30 something years, and had a passion for dog winter jackets and stuff because he just loves dogs. And because of that, he started off this one brand. It started off small, and he just knew he needed some type of direction. Got Andy involved in his team, and look at where Bob is now. Happily working from his home in his Hawaiian shirt, no more COO, and he can take that COO brain and apply it to his business. And others might see that and go, hey, maybe that's me. Maybe I don't want to be, a senior consultant at PwC or whatever anymore, or head of admin for this other company. Maybe I do have a passion, and maybe starting this brand is something that uh, is my next calling, because I can't be doing this forever. And guess what? If they can find someone more capable and cheaper to hire, they will hire them, which is a nice little angle too, right? To like, what's your retirement plan really? And there are certain statistics here that I think can lean into the messaging of this also. Mental health for men uh, who retire starts to dwindle and go down because they lose that sense of value and self-worth and being able to wake up with a purpose. Mental health of like high performance in general, men or women, really, same type of a deal. So that can then come in as a piece to go, hey, listen, what's going to happen when you retire? Or have you even thought about that in the first place? Or what are your passions? And would you like your passion to also nourish your bank account? Right. But this is a very long roundabout way of saying, even if you paid me 120, 140 a year to be your sales manager, I would still struggle to go, how, like, account-based marketing or like networking or outreach, something like that. But how do I find them? Won't I be wasting your time and your money and the paycheck if I just randomly sprayed and prayed across, like, pick this company, exhaust that list, pick that company, exhaust. And if the word spreads that I'm entering into these places to steal employees and like take away their brightest minds and entrepreneurial spirit type people, then that might be I might end up on some kind of black, like it starts to become really funky and awkward.
Interesting. So I remember earlier you mentioned that you're building out I think it was a new channel or a new team, and you would have liked to hire like a director of for that specific role rather than sort of like a manager level person. And I guess like, you read all these books and it's all about hiring. Building a great company is all about people. You hire great people, you hire A plus people, you hire people that are smarter than you. And it seems like that's the magic pill. But then even like I've been watching Alex Hormozy recently, and he hired a head of content. He hired a guy from Gary V's team. But Alex is very involved in content. He knows everything from the 3 second hook to thumbnail. Like, he couldn't just hire someone to figure it out all for him. He, as a founder, still has to do it himself. So I guess, is there ever a point where you can hire people where, like, I want to hire someone to solve this problem, they figure it out, and I give them like 200-300K a year, they have the experience to do it? Is it like a economy of scales issue where you can only do that once you're making 9 figures in a company, and from now to then you're going to have to be a part of every single part process?
Mm, I think it depends on the subject matter, for example, or for in this example. So what I mean is, and this is something that we tell uh, earlier stage brands a lot, and unfortunately, the ones that we had to turn away from our agency offering. If you have zero reference point for paid media or just generating traffic in general, whether it's through content, through influencers, through PR, or through paid media, if you have zero semblance of that thing, then whoever you bring in can tell you whatever they wish to tell you, and you have to take their word for it. You have to. It's like people that don't understand cars and they take it to the mechanic, and the mechanic says, "Oh, the widget with the thing and the coolant and the whatever, sorry, like 4 grand." And you have zero way of verifying whether that is objective truth, whether that is best practice, whether that is in your best interest or not. So the most elegant analogy that I have heard provided to me comes from Tony Robbins. Do you have to know how every single piece of your car works for you to be a good car driver? The answer is no, you don't, right? So just know enough to drive the car, and then know enough about cars to not get swindled by your mechanic is a good enough baseline start. Now, there are a lot of practitioners turned company leaders, and there are also a lot of company leaders that just know how to. A really great example of this, I think, comes from the world of tech and product managers. So product managers aren't necessarily always um, software engineers, but they run software engineering teams in a very matrix kind of fashion, right? But they head up the product. So some of them come from like a design background, some of them come from a UI UX background, some of them come indeed from the engineering background. But they have a lot of engineers, people that write the code reporting up to them. So they have to know enough to understand the language and be able to navigate those waters effectively. But to say they need to know how to write code to the nth degree, I think inhibits any type of company from moving fast, because then you need this person to know this and that and that and that and that. So imagine if, like, to be able to get a driver's license in Australia, not only do you need to know how to drive the car, you also need to know how to fix a car, put together a car, paint a car, like it's like, wait a second. I just want to do the driving part. That's the part that matters the most. The rest of it are areas that I can kind of YouTube or figure out along the way if I need to, or I just need the money to be able to pay someone to do that type of stuff and understand that lingo. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. When it comes to
I can give you another example. I know probably a grand total of this much when it comes to Klaviyo email marketing. And yet my firm generates money and delivers value to a whole bunch of brands and people and touches a whole bunch of like end consumers' lives, even though so I don't have to put it all on me, which I think is a very dangerous trap for small business owners and entrepreneurs to go, I need to have it figured out first, and then I can feel safe letting the other person come in. The dangerous part about that is if you have a few things, either you have to spend a lifetime figuring all these things out before you feel like you're ready, or you think you've got it figured out. You hire that person who's supposedly smarter than you, but you still feel like this is my baby and I have to hold on control. So I'll tell that person who's smarter than me how to do their job because I know I've done the work. I don't trust that person. I trust myself more than I trust that person. So then that funky thing occurs too. So it's not a completely hands off, laissez faire. It's also not a completely, I need to know and do every single thing. I also know a lot of founders that have that problem. They hire the person, but because they don't want to look like incapable, they do most of the work anyway. I'm like, then that person has the easiest job in the world. They just have to nod and say, good job, boss. You're doing great. So you're wasting your talent and, of course, wasting your money also.
got it. After you gave that example, a live sort of case study came to mind. So, for example, as I've been getting really focused on content creation, something I sort of turned my eye to because I knew that the moment I get serious, every single piece of content that's being released, it's going to go through 5 rounds of revisions. I'm going to want to change little things. I'm going to keep the editor again and again. And every time I give a revision, I'm going to get annoyed and it's going to take 5 rounds just to get one video out. And I didn't want to do that, but now I'm putting in the work and the results are starting to show. And I guess I am making the editor's job easy because I'm doing videos on every single little thing, timestamps of what. So I'm doing his job for him, but he is doing the bulk of the work, the probably 80% to put the video together. And I'm probably exaggerating how annoying it is or how I'm making his job easier. And I guess all the critiques I'm giving, I'm putting into a training video so that if we hire a new person, they could watch all those videos and not repeat the mistakes that the previous editor did.
Mm.
But I guess the question is, I'm talking to YouTubers, I'm watching videos, I'm trying to figure it out myself, how to reach more people, how to create more viral videos. You can't really, like, if I hired someone that knew the secret code to creating viral content, they'd be doing it themselves. So it's like this weird thing where any thoughts?
Kind of, sort of, right? Like, and we touched on this a bit earlier. Not Some people are self-aware enough to know that I know how to crack the code. I suck at being on camera. I suck at giving a shit about the edit. I don't, it doesn't interest me. It doesn't energize me. My sweet spot really is just like working behind the scenes to make that thing happen. Right. So maybe that preconceived notion might be a limiting belief that prevents you from uh, seeing whether those people exist in the first place. As an exercise, we can try this. Do me a favor, look around your room and look for anything that's red. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now look back at me. Uh, what's the first purple thing you saw?
I can't think. Yeah, I don't think I saw anything purple.
Right, exactly. We prime our brain, right, to say, hey, let's look out for these people. So if our brain is primed to say, well, if they're going to do it, they're going to do it themselves anyway, right? Or if they're good at it, they're going to do it themselves anyway. It might just be voluntary blind spots that we're putting on ourselves, as opposed to going, wait, do these people even exist in the first place? Let me go find them. So, as an example, um, my my podcast producer who is that I hired as a consultant to come in and help me on my pathway to do to just get the foundations right. He has no interest doing like having his starting his own pod, being a content creator, but he is an absolute blazing gun when it comes to systems, process, editing, the touch and feel. And he like me comes from a filmmaker background also. So we jive very well that way and filmmaker behind the scenes. So he doesn't want to be talent whatsoever. So, but point being, there's another point that you brought up that maybe I can offer you in terms of my approach with our design team and our editing team for our content. First few times, I would do exactly what you did, which was I will watch a video, for example, and record a Loom video of me watching the video, press pause, have some verbal stuff here, draw stuff out, leave extensive notes over what I'd like to change. But what I have in my mind is for me to wean off the intensity and specificity of my feedback and to have them identify the patterns of what feedback I'm actually giving. So it's not so much a video per video thing, but like certain themes, right? Like, dude, why is it always that you're picking out some line to put a like a B-roll over or like big text call out when really the let the content or the talking point breathe and live on its own. I could have easily gone remove this line here, take away B-roll there, or I can start to have a conversation to go, do you see why we're doing this? Right? It's a bit like wax on, wax off. You start on, don't ask me questions, just wax on, wax off. And then finding that right moment where you can go, do you now understand? I'm gonna go hacha, and then they wax on. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand the meaning behind the motion, is the term I always use to my team. You can go through the motions, but once you understand the meaning behind the motion, or once a leader understands how to communicate the meaning behind the motion, now the person understands the meaning and can apply it to different types of motions, right? A block is a block. It doesn't have to be wax on, wax off. It could be front, it could be side, it could be leg. Now they have versatility, which is great, which is a very fulfilling mental stimulant for anyone that wants to improve in their craft anyway. But if we get treated like every single time it's do this, do this, do this, do this, do this in this very specific way, our brain starts to take a back seat of active thinking and go, I'll just wait for Dee's next notes. They're so explicit anyway. I'll just do exactly what he says. I won't have a critical eye to be a tastemaker myself. And I want my design team and my editing team to be tastemakers themselves so that they feel like their fingerprints are all over the output as well. Now we have joint ownership, which is so much more fun and fulfilling. That has been the approach that we've taken. And that's why you'll see anyone that goes to either my IG profile or Red Hook's IG profile, you'll see so many different versions of the design treatment, right? Before we use GIFs from like SpongeBob SquarePants, and then we stopped doing that. We started like putting certain other things in there to then be able to experiment because if I had to dictate everything, I'd be stuck in there forever. And the reality is, as much as it's fun for me in some respects, the greater calling is for me to actually be like CEO and apex leader for like moving this firm forward.
I remember earlier in the beginning of our conversation talked about your personal brand, whether if you're the voice of the company Right Hook. How did you go about sort of deciding if you want to focus on the Right Hook Instagram account versus your own Instagram account, run ads from which one to focus on doing daily content, which one to optimize for? How did you make that decision?
Mm. Um, really easy decision for me, really. Which is the one that feeds the family? Focus on that one first, and then the other one is passion project. whether it's leadership content or more business related or self management, mindfulness, neuroscience, psychology, life hacks, the fulfilling stuff for me, that's all fine and good. But really, if you look at objectively at my age and the type of questions I'm asking myself, all that fun stuff is just my version of a midlife crisis. Go buy a Harley. I'm just not choosing not to buy a Harley, but explore those things instead. But the focus very much is on making sure that my 80, 90 something people under our employ and the many brands that we take care of are still able to, put food on the table and bring money home, right? So the choice is very obvious in that type of a way. And then the other stuff is to go, okay, well, if I treat this like a hobby, because I don't intend on, at least in the short term, monetizing the podcast, uh, then let's treat it like a hobby, right? Like much in the same way I go to the gym. I don't make any money from going to the gym, but for me, between the whole team knows that between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m., I am unreachable because I'm lifting heavy shit and getting crushed by heavy weights.
I love that. Through this journey of the last, I guess you're coming up to 40, do you want to grow the company from, 80 people to 200? Do you want twice the stress? Are you currently stressed? And with more, is it more money? Or are you happy with where you are? I guess all those questions, I'd love to get your thoughts on.
Mm. um Personal goals, so we put ourselves through strategy mapping and use strategy mapping as the framework, right? Balanced scorecard is another version that sprung from the same authors, or BSC for short, balanced scorecard. The goal is, so we have internally stated financial, people, and customer like customer viewpoint goals across all three for 2026. So it's a very intentional 3 years from 2023 point in time, the reason why we have that. And it definitely is not one of let's just maintain the same. We do have some fairly aggressive goals in there. Point being, we have that and want to continue growing more so from a, again, it's that whole look around for what's red and then what's purple type of a thing. Instead of going, well, is it a foregone conclusion that to make more money, the proportionate amount of headcount has to be the same? Or to even challenge that notion and go, well, what are some vehicles for us to be able to increase enterprise value without necessarily proportionally increasing headcount or increasing overhead? Start asking those types of challenging questions. Um, so that's on one side, but definitely being able to see how far we can push this thing sensibly is a very fun and compelling challenge, while also dealing with the number of headaches per dollar earned game. So it's a fun game for me because I always see it like it's a bit like, I don't know, knowledge workers version of jujitsu. No two opponents are the same. Even if it's the same opponent, no two sessions are the same. So that's always a very fun thing. Um, and just to even have like like just to even have a venture that we can take to those types of heights sounds fun, at least for now. Uh, and I think the trick for me and the challenge for me is figuring out how to then still be able to keep my curiosity nourished, right? And be in realms and areas where I do not have it all, any of it figured out, whether that is podcasting and interviewing, whether that is building an audience for like outside of the internet marketing realm, whether that is coaching other executives and other like agency owners or service, just founders in general, coaching them with the frameworks and the experience that I've had, and also the all the frameworks and teachings that I've had from my coaches that we apply into the coaching culture that we have at Right Hook. Those types of things are not key focus, but definitely I treat it the same as me going to the gym. It's just such an energy generator for me.
Are you still working alongside the co-founder from the very beginning, the meetup in Brisbane, get the first 6 clients? Are you still sort of working side by side with that co-founder?
Mm-hmm. So very much so a it's a very different nature now. So what I mean by that is I have to, because of the very one, our entire company is remote, so we don't have that in-office vibe. But then also two, and I wish I appreciated this statement made to me, this piece of advice given to me back when we were first starting out. The type of person who you are that works for a 10, 12, 20 person company will be dramatically different at like every 12 to 15 people you add. So the persona I have to play to fulfill my work at Right Hook really is one of like um, very decisive, still curious, and that's still part of my DNA, but quite like directive, very decisive, um, and like almost like an orchestra conductor. Like watch my baton, let's play the song, right? Um, so what I mean by that, it's not, we don't, and I miss it sometimes, but we don't have, when we're on and it's game time, we don't get to have that kind of like jolly banter, like talk shit a little bit, like, ease into a meeting and all that type of stuff. Right now, it's agendas. People's time is precious. The more people that join the senior leadership team weekly meeting, the more the taxi meter is just running like crazy per minute that goes by. So how do we make the most of that time? How do we pre-package pre-reading so that when people come into the meeting, we're good to go? Does that work for, very different nature compared to before, where it's like, what do you think? Nah, I don't think so. All right, forget it. We're not going to do that next week. Right. Because now one decision impacts a lot more people compared to before, where it was like, we'll just deal with it. It was the two of us, the four of us, the six of us.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, like, does it feel like you're sort of that leader that is working in not in solitude, but you're sort of carrying all the weight? But I guess you sort of enjoy that challenge. You enjoy sort of trying to figure things out and solve the problems that come to your day to day, and sort of part of your, I guess, like jujitsu, you're growing through it.
Yeah. I used to, a younger, less experienced version of me used to see it as me carrying all the weight, but really, to stick with the orchestra conductor analogy, the weight is just like one baton, right? As long as the trumpeters know what the trumpeter's done, and in practice, we've done through that, and trumpeter has a section leader for trumpets, right? Strings have section leader for strings. First violin, we've gone through the solo. Then really, this is all the way to have to do, and then I just have to tap and go, ready, bah, and then everything just goes as it needs to go. So because of that coaching culture at Right Hook, which confuses some people sometimes because they're like, wait, D, you are CEO. Who's your coach? Right. And this is how deep the coaching culture is embedded. I use my senior leadership team in various different areas as my coach for my problem solving too. So Luke, for example, I'll tap him on the shoulder and be like, "Can you coach me for this OKR? So for this quarter, you are my coach. I'll report to you. I'm accountable for keeping things on track and schedule and stuff like that. And you can ask me any type of question and challenge any of my thinking. It's not all on me because one, I'm only human, and two, I'm one of the biggest morons that I know within my social circles. I know people way smarter than me, so I need all the help I can get. So I go out and actually like elicit all the help I can get as much as I can.
I love that. Talking about social circles, um, you definitely have that people person vibe. I definitely feel like you're probably a good judge of character. How do you go about sort of networking, meeting people, building relationships? Do you like to put together things with more than three people, or small get togethers, short 15-minute sort of coffee catch up, long, deep 2 hour chats? How do you go about sort of your social life?
So if we circle back to the question you asked about originally about the personal brand thing, it I applied the same treatment with that. So my answer to the personal brand thing was like I really uh I really under resourced and under indexed on building my personal brand. Same kind of thing with the networking, really. Ever since I think I think COVID or that whole lockdown can't travel thing really did a doozy on me in terms of the amount of rubbing shoulders and meeting people that I really should have done, that coupled with the fact that there were just, always fires, especially when you have large ambitions, uh there's always an excuse to keep sitting at the laptop and keep doing stuff. And I think I gave into that excuse, right? Whether it's valid or not is a whole different other conversation to have. But I really just like, it just came to a screeching halt. And I just went, oh, maybe I'm just going to reach out to people less and do all that type of stuff less. And it stuck around for a really long time. I think it really only was kind of late last year, early this year, that I've come back out of my shell again. I'm very much a smaller group type person. I do horribly when it comes to small talk. I get very like, I don't know where to put my hands, where to look. If someone's like, "Oh, really?" And so like, that's a nice t-shirt. I'll go, let's go a bit deeper. I tend to, again, one of my core values is curiosity. One of my other core values is vulnerability. When I interact with someone who I feel like the walls go up, my curiosity goes through the roof, and I'm like, I really want to know this person now. Or it just goes to zero and I'm like, I don't know, you're not giving me anything to engage with here, right? Whereas the moment you shared that story around like, hey, my education company, I went to go do that, I felt so fulfilled, but the money was starting, I'm like, okay, we got something. Like, this is so great because thank you for respecting me enough, or feeling safe enough with me to level with me. Now I feel safe enough and respectful enough to kind of level with you too. Small groups tend to be able to do that. Large groups tend to start off where everyone's kind of looking together, but then small pockets start to show, right, and present themselves, and people move and weave into different pockets. So I'm very much and it shows also in my social circle. I have a very, very, very small social circle. I don't do well in larger ones. Really, never have. I just end up neglecting everyone. I just if I wanted to remedy that, I'd have to do a lot of work to remedy that, right? But fortunately for me, I don't. So my small group thing works out really well. And one-on-one conversations like these, I really do love getting to know a person, um, help a person, see, like, just even learn about where they're headed, what's stopping them from getting headed there, and offer up any books, any tools, any kind of even just like sounding board. That tends to be my sweet spot.
You're also like a very curious person. You have that sort of fascination energy. Is it rare to find other people that are super curious about you, super fascinated about you? Or is it a limiting belief that these people come far and few?
Um, I Yes, absolutely. I have very much a curious mind, student mind, beginner mind, to use a Zen term, like student mind, beginner mind, which is also the reason why I have this in the back, which is shuhari, which is a Japanese term for just the pathway towards mastery, and how when you reach mastery, you go back to the beginning of the lifelong student. In terms of whether I meet it, yes, it is very rare for me to meet people who, I would alter the statement though. It's very rare for me to meet people who allow themselves to be curious. And I really blame the traditional school culture for that, right? The years and years of there only is there's a right question and a wrong question to ask in the classroom. There's a right answer and a wrong answer to give. There's a right color to color in your color book, even when you're 6 years old, for what a lion is supposed to be or what the sky is supposed to be. So then now the stakes are so artificially inflated when it comes time to be a curious person, because I better not look stupid and ask the dumb question. So then what ends up happening, and I think at any type of conference where there's a Q&A section, any type of maybe university lecture, it's such a shame. You'll have the people who have genuine questions that they're super curious about, but might be too shy and afraid to ask that question because they might be perceived as like silly or stupid or dumb for not knowing it. So they censor themselves. And then you've got those ones that want to ask the question to seem smart, those types of questions, right? Where they're just trying to angle and position and stance so that it's like, ooh, look at me asking such a smart question. And they hardly want to hear the answer. They just want to be heard asking the question. And that is such a shame, right? So it's very much a delight whenever I meet an individual who has that type of curiosity. Um, and what I've found in my experience, at least, And the reason why I chose to be this person, I was never always like this. Back in my 20s, I was the kid that always thought he knew better and wanted to argue people with people for the sake of arguing with people. Um, but the reason why I chose to do a lot of self work around this and step into this frame of mind is because I noticed that most of the successful people that I've met, come across, had the privilege of working with or sitting down with next to are just like curiosity machines. They ask really good questions and then they kind of sit there and ponder about it a little bit. And then next week, they're asking yet another question and they're working on the answer from the previous question. And they're like through their career or their business or their like podcast, they just fly, absolutely fly. Right. So I went, there's something here. What is it? And probably that was the first like productive question that started me on this journey to being this type of person. Cause I was like, wait a second, what do they have that I don't? Oh, they just ask a bunch of questions and they have no shame, no ego, really. They ask their employees, they ask like the person they meet on the street, anyone. So it's seen me good so far. I think it'll see me good for most of the rest of my life, I think.
I want to get your thoughts on this. Yeah, I've recently been using this word called seen, making people feel seen. As you sort of talked about that, I'm curious, is there a difference from making people feel seen versus being super curious and fascinated about someone? Or are they two in the same thing, you think?
Um, I think it might be an overlapping circle Venn diagram.
Mm.
Some people are very good at making someone feel validated, seen, and valued, but might not be super curious about them.
Mm.
So, right, like a very soothing, imagine like a soothing, like auntie or like an elder or someone who has a lot of nurturing spirit to go like, yes. And so very validating, very safe, warm, comforting energy that makes you go like, wow, I feel like I'm the only person in their universe right now. And on the inverse side, there might be someone that's super curious, but quite bad at like it's just nonstop questions. You know what I mean? Like a lot of curiosity, but not a lot of uh the empathy or the validation or the sitting there go like, wow, thank you so much for saying that. Ooh, that's very interesting in here. Rather, it's just a script of questions that they have on their head without the responding to the statements that were made. So to and of course, asking someone a bunch of questions about their values and being curious about them helps communicate that they are valued, and we're conditioned about this. We're conditioned with this from a very young age. If you cast your mind back to when we were kids, right, there were almost like we can almost in this realm categorize the adults in our lives into two categories. One that wanted to tell us how to live our lives, how to think, how to act, when to do things, when to stop doing things. And then the ones who wanted to ask us about our lives. Wow, Andy, I haven't seen you since last Chinese New Year. So tall now. How's school? What's your favorite class? Oh, are you getting good grades? And we tend to go, ooh, that's like this person wants to listen to me. That's fascinating. Versus the ones like, Andy, your grades must be good, huh? Do you have to really study more? Like, don't forget cousin Ming is getting A's. You're like, this person just wants me to be someone else. There's no space for me. So even from a very like so that transfers over to now, I believe, at least when interacting with people, the more that comes out of the conversation, the more that person feels like there's some interest in me, right? I think dating is a really good analogy for this, like a first date. If you're sitting there asking a person about what interests them and all that, there's a certain magnetic nature to that. Or you can be curious and be like, so tell me about your last job. Did you cheat on your past boyfriend? What do you feel about love? Do you like children? What do you think about moving in? Like it's curiosity, sure, but there's no warmth, there's no connection, there's no trying to connect with a human, right?
I remember, like, as a curious person, I love asking tons of questions. And I met this person, and he was just asking me questions one after another. And it felt a bit uncomfortable. And I was like, I was trying to diagnose what was happening here because I want to make sure I'm not doing the same thing.
Mm.
And then the conclusion I came to was there's a difference from pure curiosity with no intention and just fascination versus extracting information. trying to compare, trying to see and level where you're at. And they're both asking questions, but it feels completely different.
Yes, yes. One party is inquisitive, the other party is interrogative.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you feel like you're like under your arms are getting a bit sweaty. Like, holy shit, this person is curious, but why am I like? Are you about to ask me for my like my PIN code for my credit card also? Like, there's something going on here. They're not seeking to connect; they're seeking to extract, right? And which I think the if we study uh, the great interviewers of history and the Tony Robbinses and the Oprah Winfrey's and the David Lettermans, there seems to be something about their ability to connect. Sometimes they can even like connect and still ask challenging questions, right? But still, you get a sense that they're trying to connect.
One problem I've been facing when I'm sort of going out meeting new people is, I'd meet them, I'll ask questions, I'll be fascinated. And then the moment I stop asking another question, the conversation just falls flat.
Mm,
And I'm realizing that it might be my fault because I sort of created the tracks. I've sort of created this one-way flow, and it's hard for them. And I often get shocked by the people that are like, hey, enough about me. Tell me about you, Andy. That
yeah,
shocks
that's kind of
me.
cool, right? It's so cool when
Really
that
cool.
happens.
When that happens, or I could tell they're like, they'll answer the question, they'll follow back with another question because they want to keep it flowing. And that really impresses me when I see that happen. Even you, like just starting this podcast and you asking me questions like that, you obviously instantly made you stand out from all the other guests. But I don't know if there's a solution to that. Maybe it's a great filter.
Yeah, I think it's what the metaphor, the analogy that comes to mind for me is as interviewers or people that run like podcast interview type shows, uh, if especially if it's people that we've never met before, it's almost like we are every week or every time that there's a show, we're showing up at like a dance hall and picking up a dance partner that we've never danced before with. And so, like, sometimes what happens is you lead and then they take turns and they lead as well. And there's a nice little flow going on. And some other times it's just like, unless you lead, I'm just a lump kind of following you around. And if you don't give that prompt, this GPT ain't answering shit, right? This GPT does not chat back. So I think it's a bit of luck of the draw. The way that I have approached it so far is whenever I have a guest on the show, and same as you, it records straight from the start. But to do the warm up, I typically go, "Hey, listen, so I'd love for this to be conversational. It's a two-way street. Please don't feel like you're in the hot seat whatsoever. So if you want to take it down a certain path or want to start asking me questions and put me in a hot seat, when the moment arises, just go ahead and do it, please. Don't feel like uh, it's only one way. We can definitely go there." And that tends to make them go like, "Oh, okay, I get what kind of dance we're um we're about to enter into here."
By the way, this conversation has been perfect, and I definitely don't expect it in a podcast setting. I think in real life, when I'm just meeting someone in person and we're having that casual conversation where it's not a podcast, it's not an interview, I naturally create that one flow dynamic, and it's hard for them to flip it around, or they're usually left confused when I run out of questions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It totally. I totally get that. It's I don't know. It's one of those things also, right? Like not not everyone's a conversationalist, and so they may have other skill sets, and then to be able to tease it out of them and flow with it is such an interesting game also. I think for you too, right? To kind of sit there and go like, "Ooh, what else can I ask now to be able to pull something out or trigger something where the flow starts to happen." So there's a bit of fun in that too.
Dee, tell me a bit about the sort of the Zen. You talked about the quote. Zen is something that has been popping up more and more. I've heard from Tim Ferriss and his friend Kevin Rose. Kevin Rose practices Zen a lot. Like, what is Zen? How has it influenced your life? Is it something you practice? How can you practice it?
Yeah, so I was for most of my life Catholic, got baptized and all that stuff. Mom's like, mom and dad still go to church every Sunday. Um and Uh, and also, I held in myself a lot of rage. So just anger, like rage issues, right? That would spill out in places that I didn't wish to spill out over into, and just not, I just didn't want to have it. And it caused all kinds of havoc and problems in my life. And at some point, I went, where are certain places that I can go to gain some insight, some wisdom, some knowledge, just some reading, something. Just give me something around what is happening in here, because it seems like I have no control over it whatsoever. I have no control over my emotions. I have no control over my thoughts. I have no control over my focus. I have no control of myself, which is ironic because it's myself. Like, what the hell is going on? I definitely can't control other people, but anger came from trying to control other people. And maybe that spilled out from me not being able to control myself. So there's all this kind of like messed up shit that was happening. And so grandma was always Taoist Buddhist, right? And before I got baptized and converted and all that, when I was like 8 or 9, I followed along with the just going to temple and do the bye bye and all that type of stuff. Um, and so I went. There was something there, and of course, this is also, like mindfulness practices and all that have been around for in popular culture for a while. So I just started picking up. I just started like going to websites to learn about Buddhism, just the Eastern stuff, the stuff that came from our people, like our ancestors years and years and years ago, my ancestors at least. Um, and go, well, what does Buddhism have to say about this, about mindfulness, about, and what does Zen and all the different denominations of where Buddhism went? Zen appealed to me because it sits on top of kind of OG Buddhism. It sits on top of that with a lot of paradoxes and a lot of like mind puzzles. The concept of duality, the concept of self, no self, the concept of the student is the master is the student, what they call Zen koans, right? Paradoxes, I guess. So that was mentally stimulating, but a lot of it started because I had to figure out and deal with ways to work on myself, um, and ground myself into some type of mindfulness practice. So even the control myself thing, uh, in Buddhism or in Zen, they talk about the monkey mind, and how if you learn to tame the monkey, everyone has a monkey mind, but if you learn to tame that monkey mind, now you start to master yourself just that little bit more. And I just wanted to first just stop having this anger and rage spill out all over and hurt people around my life. And then as I got that, I went, oh, wait a second, I don't want this anger in my life at all. And then wait a second, where's this anger coming from? And how do I turn this into something productive? Is this a power or is this a weakness? So it's such a rich place to be. And it all stems more so down to the mindfulness piece of it at the crux of it, rather than the sit down, knock on a piece of wood and meditate and go for like 6 hours, right? Like that's what physically people see. But even to get to a place of walking mindfulness is very empowering and very calming, to be able to see a thought pass through my head or an emotion rise up, and to go, I don't have to hold on to that emotion, and it can just pass, which helps with decision making, clear mind, uh, and just being able to sleep better at night too.
I love that, Dee. One quick topic I want to get your advice on. For someone that's so broad like yourself, what's your approach? I don't know if you already have a partner, a soulmate, a wife, I don't know if you're married, but any sort of thoughts there, finding someone that can make you feel seen, someone that is sort of can reciprocate the breath that you have.
That's the beautiful thing. You can't make anyone do anything that they don't do. That's the beautiful thing about Zen and Buddha. Like it helps really, um, the self come to terms with the fact that you have no control over this world, right? But you can flow with it. So what I mean by that is it's a resonance thing, it's a harmony thing, it's a alignment thing. Pick your word of choice, right? So for me to kind of sit here and say like, this is that. If there's anything that resonates with this tone, it will start to vibrate also. because it happens to be the same tone. If it's not the same tone, it won't vibrate. So that's all it is. I can't make that other one vibrate at a different frequency, but I can't start walking around just going like, nope, not this one. Nope, not this one. Nope, not this one. And I think to also appreciate that humans are capable of growing together and evolving together, sure, at different paces, but really just going down same paths together. That's where the dance, same thing with the interview. You can't make someone and say, like, now you ask me a question. It's just weird, right? Like that doesn't really go that. Or like you can't sit there and be like, why can't you just ask me better questions? Like it's just awkward. But you can choose to go, well, I can admit and acknowledge that I can't control this person, and I definitely can't control how this interview turns out, but I can flow with it. I can dance with it, and whatever comes comes. And then I just plan my next move accordingly. So a bit like, quite Tai Chi-ish in a way, right? You kind of go this way, I'll go that way with you, and then we'll see where we go with the whole thing. Partnerships the same, whether in business and life, social circles, situations. All you can do is flow. So, that's why even the methodology that I'm kind of piecing together and working on and coaching people on, I call it the flow operating system, right? Or just flow OS in general, because that is the best you can do. Just flow with it. The moment you try to like wrestle with it, it will always win.
Yeah, I think you sort of answered everything, because I was then thinking about sort of, age and then having kids. But if you go with the flow, things would happen when they most naturally would happen. And the matter of like, am I getting too old? Am I losing out? Like all that goes out the window, because you will naturally find your unique flow and when the time's right for you, I guess. So that you answered all those things.
Yeah, totally. Timing, the time and the quality of it. And by quality, I don't mean good or bad, but I mean the characteristics and the nature, whether it's the right person for you and whether you're the right person for them, all those things. All you can do is flow with it. Anytime that you try to strong arm it or like just squeeze a square peg into a round hole, right? Corners just get shaven off, and it's just never a fun experience.
Last two questions I always wrap up these podcasts with. I'm going to add in a third one. Do you cut your own hair?
No, the wife does. I'm skilled, but I'm not that skilled.
One, any recent discoveries that you've implemented to your day-to-day life, Dee?
Yes, consistently paying more attention to the way people run interviews or YouTube content. So I am 4 years behind on the journey that you originally started with, where you're just like, really paying attention to what makes a good hook, intro, keep people sticking around, topic, title, like all that type of stuff. So recently implemented that. It's such a fun time. It's such a fun time.
And then the last question, any personal goals or focus for the next 6 months?
Yes. Getting into the groove for the pod and the personal content, just to see what it's like. I have no idea what's past that door, but I can't wait to be able to walk through that door.
I'm so excited to follow and see what it's so nice being the observer, and you have this thing. So like I'll go to your profile in 6 months time and see what it looks like. But thank you so much for your time today, Dee. Where can people get more of you?
Um, at Real Dose of D is my handle across almost all platforms. So YouTube, it's Real Dose of D. X, Twitter, Real Dose of D. Instagram, Real Dose of D. LinkedIn, though, which I'm hardly ever on anyway, my LinkedIn game is horrible. It's just DEEDENG. Most active on IG, and then second to that, Twitter for now.
We'll link everything in the description. Thank you so much for your time. I love how present you are, how curious, how empathetic, and I love how you've like embraced your own uniqueness. And I know being in Australia feels like there are these hard grooves that are set, and it's hard to sort of not fall into them, but you've sort of embraced your uniqueness as sort of like an Asian Australian. So it's so motivating to see. And yeah, thank you so much for your time today. This was a very, very fun episode and time just flew by for me. So thank you.
Time just flew by for me too. Thank you so much for having me. I knew that I was going to be in good hands. Thank you for being an ever amazing host. The dance was super easy. It's always fun having a nice dance partner. And yeah, I mean, everyone's unique. It's just a matter of whether we let ourselves let our freak flag fly some of the time. So I figured if I'm not living the way that I am and being the way that I am, then I'm gonna be a frustrated old miserable man and insufferable to be with when I'm old anyway. So might as well start now. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Dee. Guys, if you made it this far, hopefully you guys got a bunch of value. Please let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you guys next week on another episode. Peace. One thing I'll quickly share, this is what my question sheet looks like, and then I check it off, and the things I want clips, I put a triangle.
Oh, that's dope. See, all these small little things, bro, man, I can't wait. I cannot wait. Yeah, I cannot wait. If you're open to being my momentary sensei to school me on this type of stuff, I'd be so grateful.
No, I'd be honored to share you everything I know. I'll let you go. We went over time, so thank you. Keep in contact. I definitely would love to see you when you're in Sydney. Thank you so much for your time today, Dee. Hope you have an amazing week.
You too, man. Adios. Bye.